I used to run a children's photo studio on a busy street downtown. It was in one of those beautiful old buildings' high ceilings, wooden floors that creaked with every step, and walls that whispered a kind of history you could feel but never quite name. From the outside, it looked charming. A bright little spot with colorful posters, balloons and cartoon murals I painted myself. People said it looked cheerful, welcoming. But from the first week I opened, I noticed something off. It was subtle at first, a heavy sort of stillness, even when the place was full of noise. Like the sound didn't travel right. Sometimes I'd be in the back room sorting photos and swear I could still hear faint echoes of laughter after everyone left. I told myself it was just the acoustics. Old buildings hold sound weirdly, I thought, but that excuse stopped working after a while. The first real incident happened one evening. My assistant, Emma, had gone home early, and I stayed to mop the floors. The studio was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic swish of the mop. Then I heard it. Ding! The front doorbell. It was so ordinary I heard that sound 100 times a day, but at that hour, it made my stomach twist. I looked up at the front windows. The close sign was flipped, the door locked. I stepped out from the back room, expecting maybe someone had forgotten a coat or left a toy behind. No one was there. The street outside was empty, except for a flickering streetlight. I checked the lock again. It was firm. I stood there for a full minute, listening nothing but my own breathing. When I turned back toward the hallway, a toy camera from one of the prop boxes was lying in the middle of the floor. I hadn't seen it there earlier. I put it back, locked up, and went home trying to convince myself I'd just missed it before. A week later, my assistant stayed late with me to prep for a big event, a twin birthday shoot. We were both at the front desk labeling photo files when she froze, staring past me toward the hallway. I turned around. The back door which led to the storage area was slowly swinging shut. We'd both heard the latch click closed earlier that evening. I laughed nervously and said, "Old building, right? Drafts everywhere." But she didn't laugh back. When I went to check the door, the air back there was freezing. Like I'd stepped into a refrigerator. I shut it, turned the lock, and tried not to look at my own reflection in the dark window beside it because for half a second, I thought I saw movement behind me. Things built gradually. Little moments, props out of place, photo backdrops unrolled on the floor. In the morning, when I knew I'd left them rolled tight the night before, the faint smell of candle smoke sweet, old-fashioned even though I never use candles. Once, I caught myself humming while cleaning, and I swear I heard someone hum the next line back. Then came the vacation. 2 weeks away. Sunlight, family, no cameras, no stress. When I got back, I walked in on a quiet Tuesday morning to unlock the door. The studio smelled stale, like dust and old air. I stepped inside, turned on the lights, and froze. From the birthday room at the back came the sound of children laughing. Not just one, a handful. Faint, echoing. It sounded like they were playing. I stood in the doorway, holding my breath. The laughter faded. The balloons I'd left hanging 2 weeks ago were still there. Deflated and drooping, streamers half torn. The little chairs were pushed around like someone had been using them. That was the first time I actually considered leaving. Over the years, I had 7 assistants. 3 of them refused to be alone in the building after dark. One, a college student named Lily, was so shaken after an evening session that she quit on the spot. When I asked what happened, she could barely talk. She said she'd been in the dark room, cleaning lenses when she felt someone run, their fingers through her hair. She thought it was me playing a prank, until she realized she could see my reflection in the mirror across the room. Another assistant said she heard whispering when she turned off the lights. Just before the bulbs went dark, someone whispered her name. I didn't tell any of them what I'd experienced until after they quit. Even the customers felt it sometimes. Parents would stop mid-session and look around like someone had walked behind them. One mother holding her baby, frozen mid-smile, asked, "Do you ever feel like someone's standing right behind you?" I said, "Yeah, sometimes." She left early that day. Eventually, I moved my desk so that my back faced the wall. I couldn't stand the feeling, any more that constant awareness of something standing just outside my field of vision. I'd catch myself turning around mid-edit, expecting to see someone there. But the worst moment came one evening when I was editing a batch of photos from a child's birthday party. The kids were laughing, holding balloons. Every picture came out great, except one. In the corner of the frame, reflected in a mirror, was a little boy, not one of the kids from the party. He was standing perfectly still, wearing an old-fashioned shirt with buttons up to the collar, hair neatly combed. His face was pale, almost grayish, and he was smiling. Directly at the camera. I checked every shot from that day. He wasn't in any of them, just that one. The mirror he appeared in. It had been facing the wall during the shoot. That was my breaking point. I moved out the next month. My new studio was in a modern building, bright. Open. No creaking floors, no hidden hallways. It felt lighter, happier. For the first few weeks, nothing strange happened. I started to sleep again. The tension in my chest finally lifted. But one night, as I was editing photos at home, I heard it faint but clear. Ding, a small bell, the exact sound my old front door made when someone walked in. It came from behind me. When I turned around, nothing was there. Just my reflection on the dark computer screen and, for half a second, a small shape standing over my shoulder. I used to work as a supervisor at a corporate coffee shop, the kind that's on every corner, always buzzing with people in a hurry. But our location was different. It had been a bank before the coffee shop took over. And even after the remodel, the shiny espresso machines, the polished counters, the smell of caramel syrup in the air, it still felt like a bank. Cold, echoey. Too quiet when the espresso machines went off. From the very beginning, everyone on the team knew something wasn't right. On my first week, one of the openers, a quiet girl named Michelle, told me she sometimes saw a woman in black standing in the drive-thru, box before sunrise. She described her as tall, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned black dress. No hat, no face she could make out, just a dark shape standing still behind the glass. Every time Michelle would check the cameras, thinking maybe someone had broken in early, but the footage showed nothing. Just an empty space. I laughed it off, of course. Everyone likes a good ghost story. But a few weeks later, another coworker completely unrelated said she saw a woman standing in the front window of the store one night as she drove away after closing. She thought one of us had stayed behind. She even texted the group chat, "Hey, who's still inside?" We were all already in our cars. For a while, I didn't experience anything firsthand. I just listened. Until one night near closing. It was just me and two teammates cleaning up music playing low. Machines humming. That comforting end-of-shift rhythm. I was wiping down the counters when I heard something slam from the hallway by the bathrooms. We all turned toward the sound. A wet floor sign came sliding flying out of the bathroom like someone had kicked it. It hit the wall and clattered onto the tile. We all stood there frozen. I said, "Okay, who did that?" Trying to sound calm. Both of them swore they hadn't moved. I went to look, nothing. The bathroom was empty. Lights flickering slightly like the bulbs were straining. That was the first time I felt something that wasn't just weird. It felt angry. After that, strange things happened regularly. One morning during an open early, quiet before sunrise, I was counting inventory and could see all my teammates from where I stood. Everyone was accounted for. Then, from the back, I heard the freezer door slam open and shut. Hard. Once. Twice. Then over and over like someone was yanking it. The heavy steel door makes a distinct sound, a sharp clank you can feel in your chest, and I knew it immediately. I ran back there, expecting maybe the latch had come loose or a fan had kicked on and caused suction. But when I got there, the door was completely still, closed tight, and the air was warm. The freezer's compressor wasn't even running. But the night that really got me, the night that made me believe happened, a few months later. It was close to midnight, and we were finally locking up. I sent my 3 teammates to the front door while I did the last walkthrough. Checking the bathrooms, wiping down the counters, switching off lights one by one. Only the dull glow of the security lights remained. The store was silent except for the faint hum of the fridges. I walked to the alarm panel, started keying in the code, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming from behind me in the back room. At first, I thought maybe one of the girls had come back for something, but the sound was too slow, too steady. I turned my head and saw someone duck behind one of the metal storage shelves. My heart dropped. "Hey!" I called. No answer. I walked toward the shelf, half expecting a thief, half hoping it was just one of my team messing around. I turned the corner, nothing. Completely empty. I checked the cameras on my phone, and sure enough, I could see the 3 girls all standing at the front door, chatting and waiting. I yelled to them, "Were any of you back here just now?" They all shouted back, "No!" The tone in their voices told me they weren't joking. I took a deep breath, turned the lights back on, and did a full sweep. Every corner, every shelf, nothing. So I turned everything off again, walked back to the alarm panel, started to arm it. Footsteps again. Loud, fast. This time I didn't even turn around right away. I could see the shadow moving across the wall, passing behind me. Then I caught a glimpse of it, a dark shape. Like someone crouching low, darting behind the same shelf as before. That was it for me. I spun around, shouted, "Nope!" and bolted for the front door. As I ran, I yelled, "Go! Go!" And the girls didn't ask questions. We all sprinted out, slammed the door, locked it, and stood there panting in the cold parking lot under the flickering streetlight. I told them what I saw, expecting laughter or teasing, but no one smiled. Instead, one of them, the quietest of the group, said, "You saw it too." That's when they all started sharing their stories. The woman in black, the figure in the window, the feeling of someone breathing down their neck in the back hallway. One of them said she'd once found a coffee cup from the break room, sitting inside the old vault, which had been locked since before the remodel. We all just stood there for a while, staring at the dark windows of the store. No one wanted to go back in. Eventually, we agreed no one would ever close alone again. After that night, things got quieter for a bit, but the feeling never left. Every shift you could sense it, like something unseen was watching from the shadows of that old vault room. Some mornings, the drive-through headset would pick up faint static and voices whispering. Once, when I was counting tills, I heard a woman hum just a single note from behind me. When I turned around, the air was empty, still, and freezing cold. I transferred to another store a few months later. Brand new location. Fresh paint, new floors, no history. On my first closing night there, everything went fine, lights out. Alarm-armed, calm silence. And then, just as I was walking to my car, I glanced through the glass door. For a second, just a second, I saw a woman in black standing at the back counter. Still, watching, and then she was gone. When I was in high school, I worked as the caretaker of our church in South Florida. It wasn't a big job cleaning up after services, locking the buildings, keeping the grounds neat, but I loved the quiet. The church sat on a few acres of land, surrounded by palms and mangroves that rustled even when there wasn't a breeze. The main chapel was simple white walls, stained glass windows, and a tall cross that caught the afternoon sun, but the real work happened in the L-shaped building next to it. One side had classrooms where Sunday school was held. The other side contained the fellowship hall, kitchen, and the church offices. Between the two wings, right in the crook of the L, was a narrow passageway that led into the fellowship hall's entryway. That passage always felt strange. Even during the day, it stayed a few degrees cooler, and sounds seemed to echo oddly in there. One afternoon, I got to the church about an hour after everyone had gone home. The parking lot on the far side was completely empty, not a single car. I walked around the back of the building because the maintenance closet, where I kept my supplies, was off that small passageway. It was quiet, the kind of heavy, late afternoon silence where even the birds stopped chirping. As I got closer to the back door, I froze. I could hear voices inside. Two women speaking softly in Spanish. It sounded like they were standing just a few feet beyond. The door closed enough that their words were muffled but distinct. One of them laughed lightly, then the other spoke again. I didn't think much of it at first. Sometimes the ladies from the congregation stayed after a meeting or choir practice, chatting while they waited for a ride. But there hadn't been any meetings that day, and I'd just walked past the empty parking lot. Still, I brushed it off and reached for my keys. The moment the metal touched the lock, the voices stopped. Dead silent. When I opened the door, the passageway was empty. The narrow hall stretched ahead into the entryway, dimly lit from the tall windows at the far end. The two bathrooms off to the side were dark, doors standing open. "Hello?" I called out, stepping inside. My voice echoed strangely against the cinder block walls. No response. I walked a few steps into the entryway and looked through the open doorway into the fellowship hall. The lights were off, but sunlight poured in through the blinds, striping the floor with gold. No one was there. It had taken me maybe 3 seconds from unlocking the door to entering, not enough time for anyone to run to the kitchen or out the main doors. Still, I turned and hurried toward the front just to be sure. Both main doors were closed, locked from the inside. That was the first time I remember feeling genuinely uneasy there. My dad was a carpenter, and sometimes he'd do repair work for the church in the evenings. A few days after I told him what happened, he came home from a late job looking different. He didn't scare easily, but that night he looked pale. He said he'd been working in the same passageway, replacing a section of the door frame near the back. Everything was quiet until he heard a crash from inside the fellowship hall. He thought maybe a chair had fallen. Or something had slid off one of the long tables. He ran in to check. Nothing was out of place. Not a chair moved. Not a tablecloth wrinkled. The air in the hall was still. He told me he stood there for a while, waiting for another sound, but all he could hear was the faint hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of the exit sign light. He left early that night. About a week later, he was outside near the classrooms, hammering something on a wooden frame when it happened again. A loud crash, like a whole stack of metal folding chairs had fallen over from inside the building. He ran to the door, flung it open, and once again everything was perfectly in place. He checked every classroom. Empty. The hallway lights flickered as he passed. When he told me that, he laughed it off, but it wasn't his usual laugh. More like someone pretending they weren't rattled. After that, neither of us liked staying late there. I started locking up before sunset whenever I could. If I had to go in after dark, I'd bring a flashlight even though the lights worked fine. I just didn't like that dim yellow glow they cast on the walls. Sometimes, I'd think I heard footsteps echoing in the hall when I was in the classrooms. Just slow, measured steps, always in the direction of the fellowship hall. Once, I thought I saw light flicker under the door, like someone had turned the kitchen light on, but when I checked, the switches were all off. It wasn't constant. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there. And it never felt threatening, exactly just wrong. Years later, after I'd moved away, I stopped by the church on a visit home. A new caretaker had taken over. We chatted a bit, and I casually mentioned the odd feeling that passageway used to give me. He paused, looked at me for a moment. Then he said quietly, "Yeah, sometimes I hear people talking in there. Usually women. When I check, no one's around." He said it like it was no big deal, like it had just become another part of the job. I never told him what language I'd heard, but he added something that still gives me chills. He said, "The weirdest part? It always sounds like they're standing right on the other side of the door, like they're waiting for me to open it." If you have similar stories or any ghost or paranormal experience that you will like me to make a video on, you can share it with me via my email. If you watched to this extent, that means you enjoyed the story. Like and subscribe to the channel so that I can create more amazing videos.